Robots Radio presents...
Today's chat is brought to you by, well, all of your support. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through Podbean's crowdfunding, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a patron of the FFC, please be sure to visit our website and click on the support link. Even a single dollar helps, and for those of you who are already patrons, thank you again for your generosity.
You may have heard the whispers of guardians gathering in the shadows, exploring the mysteries of this world and the worlds which surround us. We are all in search of truth. Sometimes we need to focus that search, focus that fire. And so we come together. Welcome to Focused Fire Chat.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat, recorded on November 18th, 2020. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining us once again. This week's episodes are going to be focused around exploring the relationship between Master Chief and Cortana within the Halo series. This particular episode will serve as what we have come to call the intro session of the week's exploration. Before we go any further, however, let's run through a quick introduction of who all we have with us on the show. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86.
I got a nifty sword. It electrify, go stabby stabby. It's green.
Go stabby.
Hi, guys.
And last but definitely not least, in the hot seat as guest co-host, we have, the resident Halo lore master, pensHALO. Pens, how are you doing?
Oh, doing well. Just glad to not be troubleshooting a Soho's firewall. So, yeah.
Bleh.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
As has come to be the usual just reminders / announcements for these episodes, just wanted to give a quick shout to go check out the lore let me learn how to talk real quick. thelorenetwork.com, and let us know your thoughts on the weekly lore roundups that we do over there, as well as, if you do not mind, giving us a rating and a review over on iTunes. And if you have an extra minute, doing the same rating and review for the Destiny Lore audio file that Green does so generously for the whole community there. And then, really, with that kind of out of the way, this is going to be, as the title tells you, is Extra Lore. It's another dive into the Halo lore. This one, I know Pins and I were talking about how to do kind of a mini-series, so we're going to do some back-to-back episodes on just various aspects of Halo lore, kind of building up, hopefully, to the release of Infinite. Keep calling it Infinity, and I have to physically tell my brain to not call it Infinity. And so this particular week we're going to talk about the two of the most majorly recognizable characters in the series, Master Chief and Cortana. Their relationship is of extreme importance. But Pins, I don't know, do you have anything to say about that before really just jumping with both feet into the whole thing?
Well, for me, any really well-written story has great relationships. It doesn't matter which one it is. And when you're talking about Halo, other than getting past the Halo rings, which are the namesakes of the series, it comes down to Master Chief and Cortana. Those are the two icons of the series. And just their relationship. You kind of see it in the games. It becomes a lot more fleshed out in the novels. And to me, the culmination of it is Halo 4, where you really see how close they are. It's not a romantic
Chief getting broken up.
Yeah, it's easy to understand why some people would see it as a romantic relationship because they are so close, but it's really not. I mean, in most fiction, the concept of a soul bond, which usually equates to a romantic relationship, it's just two people entities that are exceedingly close and are near perfect matches. And as we'll kind of get into, Chief and Cortana are pretty much perfect matches for each other. And how they kind of got there is actually the interesting part of it. So
they're kind of, I mean, they understand each other.
Yes.
You talk about how they complement each other in a lot of ways. Cortana is the, I want to say, slightly bossy woman in the relationship, but Chief doesn't take any of her at the same time.
They're both really strong personalities. And I think that's what makes it really like so nice, is because they're completely comfortable deferring to the other in the situations that, like, there are times when Cortana has no problem, buttoning up and letting Chief do what he does best. At the same approach, Chief also doesn't have any problem with Cortana calling shots, because, it really, I think it reminds me of like a really healthy relationship in that sense, because they both recognize that the other strengths complement their own weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, in a real early interview, Joe Staten was talking about Chief and how, Cortana is brilliant, but, she's the one who comes up with everything, well, a lot of the things, and gives Chief guidance through you. But then there's these times that she straight up says, I don't know what to do. And that's when Chief comes in. And once you start getting into the external fiction, I've always kind of seen it, especially, is that Chief is actually more the straight man in the relationship, and Cortana's in most traditional things,
she would be the somewhat extrovert.
Yes. I mean, she definitely is snarky. One of the best lines, and going back to Halo Outpost, one of the best lines in an interview with Jen Taylor, one of her most favorite lines in all of Halo is, I usually like a little more intel with my intel, which is a line from Halo 4. And it perfectly sums up just her attitude and everything. And it's great. So,
speaking of Jen, didn't they just announce that she is going to voice Cortana in the animated? Was it animated or action? Was it live action?
Yeah, they just restarted filming the live action stuff, because they started putting out really, really promising teasers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought I saw something on Twitter the other day that she did go ahead and accept that role, which it's like better.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to see anybody else do Cortana.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to remember if she did Cortana in the Halo Legends, and I can't remember if she did or she didn't. I think she did. It would be exceedingly difficult to have Cortana and not hear Jen Taylor's voice, just like it would be exceedingly difficult to have Chief and not have Steve Downes. Which really makes me interesting, because it's Pablo Schreiber is doing Chief in the Showtime series. I'll admit, the only thing I've really watched him in is American Gods, and I'm not sure how he's going to pull off the gravitas that Chief has, but it'll be interesting to find out.
Yeah. So Cortana and Chief have their relationship start off pretty early, even before Cortana and Chief go together.
Well,
would you? I mean, how much of Halsey is Cortana at that point? Let's start in the deep end.
All right, we might as well start with the deep end. Okay, so the first thing you have to remember is Cortana and Chief, officially, according to the Halo timeline, have only been actively paired for 4 months. It's from the point in time just before Halo CE to the end of Halo 3, that's really when they were both actively at their most active. That was that's less than 4 months, because what happened, Halo 4 occurs over the period of 3 days. So in less than 4 months, that was their whole relationship, and they essentially were perfectly matched. So to kind of get into that, I know when you're getting to that, kind of have to do a little bit of a kind of a creation for both of them, I guess, and then we can kind of get into that. But the one thing before we get into it is, yes, as with most things in the Halo universe, Catherine Halsey has a place in this part of the story, and a pretty big part, actually. So, I guess we can kind of just go straight into that then. The very first time, to start it all, you have to start with Catherine Halsey when she meets John. It's right. August 17th, 2517, when Catherine Halsey and then Lieutenant Keyes visit the planet Eridanus 2, which was John's home planet, to visit what would be the first of the subjects designated for the Spartan 2 program. This was John, who actually was Subject 117. When Halsey sees John for the first time, he is playing King of the Hill. Side note, that's the first time that a Halo game type is actually mentioned in lore.
Okay.
And it's about as bloody as the actual game type.
Put it this way, John was so good that he went 45-0 in King of the Hill.
What?
And all he got was a chipped tooth.
Yep.
That's insane.
Yes. So Halsey comes over, and the teacher is distracted. The teacher comes over. The teacher's distracted. She comes over, sees John, and asks him what he's doing. John's reply: winning.
Of course.
So
because that is important.
Yes. So, and kind of throughout this, I've pulled some quotes from primarily The Fall of Reach, because that's where a lot of the basics for the relationship come from. During this, Dr. Halsey offers to play another game with John, and she pulls out a coin. It's implied that it's a quarter, a U.S. quarter. And she says, all you got to do is call it, see which way it lands. So she flips it, and John focuses on it and snatches it, kind of grabs it midair and calls the proper side that it came up. And, the deal was that if he won, he could keep it. And this actually is the first time where you start seeing, where actually the basis for the relationship between Cortana and John being as close as it is. And the quote goes like this. John retracted his hand. I get to keep it, right? That's what she said. Yes, you can keep it, John. She smiled at him, then stopped. She shouldn't have used his name. That was a bad sign. She couldn't afford the luxury of liking her test subjects. She mentally stepped away from her feelings. She had to maintain a professional distance. She had to, because in a few months, number 117 might not be alive. So, the one thing you have to remember is when Halsey was working on the Spartan program, she initially had a lot of reservations. She kind of, and I remember mentioning this in her journal, in the episode on her journal. She had reservations over the thing, but because of a heinous act perpetrated by the insurrectionists, she went ahead with it. And the fact that John was the first one, not only that she met, but the first one that anyone in the program had been interviewed with, she bonded with him, for lack of a better term. And eventually, Halsey always saw the Spartans as her children, which is kind of ironic because she was a horrible mother to her daughter. Throughout The Fall of Reach, the book, you kind of see this where it's isolating on John, and it's Halsey seeing John and noticing him. Right after, this is another part, this is right after Halsey speaks to the children and letting them know that they've all been inducted into the Spartan 2 program. Dr. Halsey spotted John, subject number 117, the first boy she had confirmed as a viable candidate. He wrinkled his forehead, confused, but he listened with rapt attention. And then a bit later it says, John 117 stood, but he kept his gaze on Dr. Halsey and remained stoic. This is all from Halsey's noticing him. And this happens throughout when they go on this wilderness training where John takes the lead and brings all of the trainees home. because of his actions, it's Halsey that actually recommends him to becoming a squad leader. Halsey is the one. There was a lot of debates on who would be considered the leader of the Spartans. Kurt 051, Fred 104, who ends up being on Blue Team, and Jerome 092, who is the Spartan that we come across in Halo Wars and Halo Wars 2. All three of them, and along with John, were thought of potential leaders for these Spartans in general. But Halsey was convinced it would be John. One of the other parts is, and like I said, this is where Halsey knew she had to try to remain distant, but she couldn't, especially when it came to John. And one of the other scenes that, as you kind of look at it, is when they're getting ready for their augmentation. At this point in time, the Spartans candidates, they're all 14 years old. They've been training for years, and they're getting ready to undergo some serious augmentations. And there's 75 of them. So another line, this is another set of quotes from Fall of Reach. Dr. Halsey forced the best smile she could muster. How are you feeling? I'm fine, ma'am, John replied groggily. The nurse said the sedation would take effect soon. I'm fighting to see how long I can stay awake. His eyelids fluttered. It's not easy. John spotted Bendays and he struggled to sit up and salute, but failed. I know this is one of the chief's exercises, but I don't know what the twist is. Can you tell me, Dr. Halsey? Just this time. How do I win? Mendez looked away. Dr. Halsey leaned closer to John as he closed his eyes and started to breathe deeply. I'll tell you how to win, John, she whispered. You have to survive. And like I said, it's throughout all of Halo lore when you're talking about Halsey and the Spartans. Like I said, she saw all the Spartan 2s as her children. She could identify every Spartan 2 when they were in their Mjolnir. And at that point in time, they all wore the exact same type of Mjolnir armor.
Yeah, because you saw that in Halo Reach when she was talking to, I think it was George, I believe. Mm-hmm.
Well, George had his helmet off at that point in time, but
but she knew exactly who he was. And
Isn't George kind of hard to miss?
Well, George is a bit of a behemoth, yes, but
yeah.
Well, you have to remember George was the only Spartan 2 in a team of Spartan 3s. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he in all Spartan 2s were about 7 feet tall, and if you could, the Spartan 3s actually, although I don't know I'm trying to remember how accurate that is. Spartan 3s underwent the same augmentations, but because of the medical advances, they had a higher success rate. But yeah, a Spartan 2 would stand out.
In some ways, they had higher success rates.
Yeah, that's another show.
There's other things.
Yeah, but either way, I mean, throughout it all, you could see that Halsey favored John. Again, from the word go, she, despite her own intentions, she bonded with him, and saw and began to care for him. Just she cared for all the Spartans, but I think she cared for John more. And like I said earlier, when Halsey was first brought on by Oni, her initial role was supposed to be developing AI, and that actually comes to play here very shortly. But she was given a set of, as a test to kind of look over and evaluate the potential for the Spartan 2 program, what was needed to make it successful. And in her journal, it lists a lot of very clinical thinking of the original Orion program. They took fully grown men, and that weren't trained from birth. And throughout the whole thing, she came up with the resolution that you needed preteens that would be trained with loyalty for a long period of time and then augmented because their bodies would be able to adapt to the augmentations better. And like I said, even though from a clinical standpoint she had all that, but she knew that there were both ethical and moral implications to this. And she actually, if it wouldn't have been for a nuclear attack by the insurrectionists, I still am not fully convinced she would have gone through with it. That was just like the tipping point for that she felt that she had to. So, I mean, up until this point, what you can see is Halsey had this bond with John. Now, why does that become important? for this next part when we start talking about Cortana. So the development of Cortana was in response...
Real quick. Right,
Yeah.
hang on real quick. Let's take a quick little break, just real quick, and run a ad just to kind of break it up, because I think we're gonna before we jump into the Cortana piece, just so that people have a chance to digest the information there. If you don't mind,
Tune into the Spinfoil Theory podcast for questions. Who is an orc? Who's an orc? What is an orc? What is that? For queries.
Did the Hive really just body shame the Vex into changing their frames?
For special guests.
All the guests.
For Spinfoil Theories. Mara
Even Levante
saw the
is
Sabathoon. The Spinfoil Theory podcast. Insert information here. So why didn't you didn't give the information? Give the information.
Oh, Spinfoil Theory is available on Spotify, iTunes, and Podbean. You can also get us at Twitter at Spinfoil Theory and or spinfoiltheory@gmail.com.
but okay. So Cortana, what do we got
Yes.
with Cortana?
Okay. So, excuse me. The Cortana was created because there needed to be an AI that could handle advanced, code cracking and things of that nature that was necessary for what was titled Operation Red Flag. Operation Red Flag was the attempt for the UNSC to capture a prophet. The prophets were the leaders of the Covenant hegemony, and try to get a sue for peace. What Dr. Halsey had determined was that she needed the best possible source material. Well, at that point in time, smart AIs were created from human brains from humans who were deceased. Their brains were run through and categorized in an AI matrix, and then at that point in time, it created an artificial intelligence. Dr. Halsey determined that this was not sufficient, and because the materials were not good enough. So therefore, she broke all protocol and with the nod from Oni, created 20 clones of herself. The clones were grown, but all of them were designed to enhance the neural physiology and the expense of the biological. The idea was to be able to transfer her brain, her knowledge, everything into these clone brains and then generate AI from them. So essentially, you're taking a living brain, not a dead one, and creating an AI, which kind of went against UNSC moral dictata. So
she makes all these copies of herself, and what was she initially planning for all of them?
Well, I think based upon some of the stuff that's come out, there was an early AI that was called, that was considered Cortana's sister. It was Kalima. She was one that was with Halsey kind of towards the end of the during Reach. But the idea was to have a number of brains. That way you could create a number of, at this point in time, would have been third generation AI. Also, as a side note, in Halsey's journal, there are 4 pages that are torn out. Those were later released. Halsey, and one of the theories is, and when we're talking about AI, one of the concepts that you have to understand is the concept of rampancy. Smart AI have a shelf life, and it's 7 years. After 7 years, smart AIs essentially think themselves to death. They have a limited amount of storage, but because they can make such great leaps of logic and intuition, they just don't have the space to keep doing that, to keep holding that knowledge. So essentially, they run out of disk space and they break down. In most cases, when they get close to the 7 years, the UNSC will designate the AI for disposal. One AI that actually designated it on her own was the AI Serena, which was the AI of the Spirit of Fire, which is the ship in Halo Wars. It's actually a kind of a touching note that she realizes that she's degrading and she has no choice. So she essentially puts herself out of her own misery
Sabuku, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Where you...
Yeah, Seppuku.
Yeah, it was a little bit more flashy, if I remember correctly,
Did
with Serena.
she blow herself up?
No, Serena, at this point in time, not to go, well, at that point in time, the Spirit of Fire had already lost its slip space drive, so they were just kind of drifting. So what she did was there was a rotation of crew members that would wake up to help do basic maintenance. Like I said, she realized that she was reaching the end, and because there was a flood outbreak on the ship, she was actually able to awake one of the Spartans, Jerome, to contain it, but she realized that her delay worsened the outbreak. So, with help from Dr. Ellen Anders, who was on the ship, she kind of did her own final dispensation. She left a note for Captain Cutter, and then essentially initiated a termination code, which wiped her out.
Which is really, it's kind of unique with the smart AIs, because a lot of times they don't have a say in how that happens. It's usually a kind of a forced deletion, I guess would be the gentlest way of saying that.
Yeah, I mean,
you kind of get that with
is that once they start getting close to that, those AIs start getting evaluated. They're pulled from an active service, and then almost all AIs are implemented with a termination code. So, and that termination code is initiated at that point in time to wipe them out. So, but kind of back to Cortana. Like I said, the idea was for Red Flag, Halsey wanted to give it the best chance to succeed, and she felt that the best way to succeed was to use a human brain, which hers, that was kind of at its peak and was living. So on November 7th, 2549, Halsey took one of the clone's brains, one of her clone's brains, which was labeled H1, and created an AI. Now, the one thing about AI is when they get created, they have a tendency to name themselves, and the AI gave itself the name Cortana. And the first word spoken by Cortana was in Italian, and it was let me try this one more time. It's late, and I'm trying to remember how to speak Italian. It's been a while since I've done this.
It's okay.
You're still light years ahead of me.
È finito, il pedone vanno nella stessa scatola, which essentially means when the game is over, the king and the pawn go into the same box. That saying was told to Catherine Halsey by her mother the first time her mother beat her at chess.
Okay.
Yeah. So it
fitting for Chief and her.
So now Halsey did input a viral termination code into Cortana's memory kernel, but based upon what she could see, she wasn't sure that it actually took, and it's possible that Cortana detected and bypassed that code. So she turned off the only way to kill herself. So,
because Cortana.
Mm-hmm.
Which causes problems later.
Yes.
Well, it's also because they're given some of the things that Cortana does alter within herself to make sure that she gets matched with John too. It's like, that's not entirely without reason that people think that she might have bypassed that.
Yeah. So
just a bit.
So this is 2549, and then during that time she worked with Halsey. Halsey programmed her with some of the best cracking and Oni software with the idea of stealing a ship, being able to crack the computer code there and take that. So on August 25th of 2552, Halsey informed Cortana that Red Flag was a go, and had told her, essentially said, just the quote. This is the quote from Fall of Reach. She brushed her fingertips over the glass surfaces. Which one will be mine? Which one do you want? She immediately gravitated to the picture in the center of Dr. Halsey's collection. It showed a handsome man standing at attention as Vice Admiral Stanforth pinned the UNSC Legion of Honor upon his chest, a chest that already overflowed with citations. Cortana framed her fingers around the man's face. He's so serious, she murmured. Thoughtful eyes, though. Attractive in a primitive animal sort of way. Don't you think, Doctor? Dr. Halsey blushed. Apparently, she did think so. Cortana's thoughts mirrored many of her own, only unchecked by normal military and social protocol.
Halsey practically raised John.
Well, I mean...
Well, but again, you have to think also not necessarily like romantic. It's like it's almost like it in a weird way. It's almost like a mother's love.
Yes, and actually, it's not really in a weird way. Like I said, Halsey was integral at every step of the training and raising of 75 kids. I mean, even though 33 were the ones that actually made it through the augmentation, well, officially 33 made it through the augmentation. She knew them all, and John was her favorite. So, and this is where it kind of started. It actually kind of comes together here because there's a question of compatibility. Because Halsey initially was like, "Okay, well, I don't know if that's the best idea," and they brought up that there's a question of compatibility. Cortana blinked. His neural patterns are in sync with mine within 2%. With the new interface we'll be installing, that should fall well within tolerable limits. In fact, her gaze drifted and the symbols along her body brightened and flashed. I have just developed a custom interface buffer that will match us within 0.081%. You won't find a better match among the others. In fact, I can guarantee it. So, essentially, Cortana, before this, Cortana and Chief were 98% compatible, and after this, it was 99.9919. So, yeah.
It reminds me of the comment that you had during one of the Resist This screen of the women always learning how to game the system.
Yep.
And, this is kind of where it all comes together, because you have to remember, Cortana was essentially created off of Halsey, and Halsey said a number of times Cortana reminded her of herself when she was younger, probably like just before she started working with Oni. So, and even though Cortana was her own entity, being that she is based off of Halsey, and as you can see, like, the first quote that Cortana says is a quote that came from Halsey's mother. Those feelings and empathy kind of came along. So it makes sense that the bond that Halsey developed with John actually carried over. So, like I said, it's interesting because they're so compatible, and Lord knows there's enough bad fan fiction that have those two as a romantic pairing. But like I said, it's not a romantic pairing. It's essentially more along the lines of twins, I would say. I have cousins who are twins, two girls, and for the longest time they could almost finish each other's sentences. Even when they were apart, they still dressed somewhat similarly and things like that. And that's pretty well known with twins. So, yeah.
So they're the familial rather than obviously romantic or anything that could be considered skewed.
Right. So
Cortana literally changed her makeup so she would fit more closely with John. Has there been any other instances of other AIs doing something so brash?
Not really. Not that I can remember in any of the Halo lore. That essentially they made themselves compatible. There are instances of AIs, going the extra mile. Black Box, as much as I'm not or Blue Cube, if you're a fan of Hunt the Truth. And
Black Box is amazing.
Yes. Like, when Cortana took over, Black Box isolated a bunch of AI when Saren Osman and Lord Hood were able to escape, and pretty much left it up to Osman as to what to do from a dispensation standpoint. Like I said, Serena in her own self-termination. Iona, who was the AI paired with Black Team, that one's kind of unique because it was featured in a novella called
Wasn't Iona the one that Black Box judged?
Yeah, Black Box and Roland.
Yeah, Roland, that's right.
Saint's Testimony,
right.
which is really interesting. Essentially, it's supposed to be the UNSC judging this AI to decide whether or not to dispose of her or not, and it talks about how this AI is essentially dreaming to help keep herself from going insane, and it was just really interesting. And then Roland himself, after Cortana kind of took over, Roland was one of the few that decided not to join her. So even though knowing he has his own limitations. So, but I don't think there's never been an AI that yet that has gone to that extent. But we don't know what Infinite holds. So
this is true. Especially with the going back to kind of like the bigger overtones of the story that haven't been really touched on for a while, it seems. It's gonna be kind of scary, I think.
Okay. And just as a spoiler for anyone, the novel Shadows of Reach, John and Blue Team return to Reach and end up returning to Castle Base, which was Halsey's base. And while it never is specifically mentioned, they retrieve a few things from her personal lab. The stuff that was in her personal lab was some of the remaining cloned brains.
Oh,
that
no.
were in cold storage. Well, I mean, also, in the trailer that was released for Halo Infinite, at the end, they kind of show John walking towards the control room of the ring, and you hear Cortana's voice. Well, in there, someone found, there's a point in time where you see Chief Mjolnir start to boot up. Well, someone found in the lines there a QR code that when you scanned was to an audio clip. The audio clip was actually of Cortana, but it was saying, wait a minute, that's me, but it's not. It was something to that sense, which kind of led a number of people to believe that there's another Cortana model that's going to be made to help defeat the rampant Cortana. So
that would be scary, but really interesting story-wise to deal with.
It would actually parallel with what happened with the Forerunners and Mendicant and Offensive Bias, which Mendicant Bias was the rampant AI that assisted the Flood in destroying in attempting to destroy the Forerunners. Offensive Bias was the AI the Forerunners created to combat Mendicant Bias. So you're kind of fighting fire with fire on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so we've gotten to the point now where Chief and Cortana are actually officially paired. This occurs on August 29th, 2552. John had just come back from the campaign on Sigma Octanus 4, where after a debriefing, Halsey had pulled him aside and introduced him to the latest version of Mjolnir armor. This is the Mjolnir armor that we see in Halo CE. And also it's been modified to be able to handle an AI. After some initial reservations from John, because he thought he didn't want an AI to actually take over the suit, Halsey verified that no, that wouldn't happen. And their initial conversation is one that's kind of interesting. Not a lot of room in here, a smooth female voice said. Hello, Master Chief. Hello, Cortana. I'm detecting a high degree of cerebral cortex activity. You're not the muscle-bound automatons the press make you out to be. Automaton? The Master Chief whispered. Interesting choice of words for an artificial intelligence. Thus begins the snark in the relationship. And throughout most of it, Chief can give back just as good as Cortana.
Oh my gosh. So true.
So,
do you guys have a favorite moment, like snark-wise, between the two of them?
Oh man. Snark-wise? Oh geez.
Honestly, there's two that come to mind. One I already mentioned, the one where she says, I usually prefer a little more intel with my intel, but I think my favorite comes in Halo CE, right after Cortana teleports Chief onto the Truth and Reconciliation. This is when the Flood was there. And she teleports him upside down. And
she just drops him on his head. This is what you get, Infinite
It's
Child.
not intentional, I think, if I remember correctly. It was on accident.
Totally on accident. You have to remember, at this point in time, she had just got introduced to the Forerunner teleportation grid. And you hear her say something like, oh, okay, that's what those means. And all of a sudden, you see Chief just sit there and slam his hand against the side of his helmet. Yes, right. Sorry.
Oh. Whoops. Did I do that?
I forgot about that.
I mean, it's this unbelievably serious, the Flood's been released, everything's going to hell, and you're trying to save Keys, and it's just this one humorous little thing before arguably one of the toughest levels in Halo CE.
I think mine has to probably be up, but one of the other ones that's up there with me is the one from Halo 2 when he's giving the Covenant back their bomb, and it's like well, what if you miss? I won't. That was just it's just hit the standard Chief one-liner of just no, that's not going to happen. It's just
utter confidence.
Well, then there was where he goes, what was it? This is crazy, right? Well, you can stay here. Well, lucky for you, I like crazy. I mean, just as a side note, the writing, that Marty O'Donnell was involved in, and then in Halo 2, Halo 3, and then Eric Troutman and his team, who wrote a lot of the lines in Halo CE, they were just utterly brilliant. It helps that Steve Downes and Jen Taylor were able to deliver the lines the way they did.
Yeah.
But yeah, from a snark standpoint, those are all some of the really good ones. That were just. Halo 3 had a good one right after Chief rescues Cortana. It's remember, there's two of us in here now. Although that's not so much snark as was kind of a serious one. But, so
they do seem to have a good balance between the two. It's not just slapstick all the time. You're getting serious moments mixed in with it.
I think that can be. I mean, I think honestly that sums up Halo 2 in a lot of ways because there's the grunts, which are just, you want to talk about slapstick, they nail the slapstick so well. And then, but then every now and then you'll run into a grunt who is actually got a serious storyline, and it's rare, it's not common, but it does exist.
Grunts are the gnomes of the Halo universe.
They really are, and to be fair with the grunts, they have some of the saddest backstories. Nonsense that they have to put up with as a species is just ridiculous.
Well, they're considered. I think maybe drones might be the actual lowest part of the active Covenant races, but the grunts definitely are there. They're considered cannon fodder, really. So, but they do have some of the great lines in there. And as a side note, in Halo CE, Joe Staten voiced a number of those lines.
The grunts?
The grunts. Mm-hmm.
That is amazing.
Although, I don't know, I still like the one from Halo 5 that had the grunt and the elite sitting on the ledge, and the grunt's just going on, and every now and again you just hear the elite go, So, anyway.
You ever wonder if that's the same in Destiny? That's why the Guardians just don't talk very often, is that we're just waiting for the ghost to stop talking.
No, that's in Beyond Light, there's the throwaway line of, "You're quiet today."
Yeah.
Oh,
Man.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, really actually kind of transitioning into the shout out segment for this episode, really big shout out to you, Pens, for putting all these notes together, because it's a daunting thing to collect all this stuff. And it's like, I'm like, or I could just ask Pens to do it. And without fail, Pens comes back with like 4 pages of information.
I will not forget one of the first or second time we did this, and it's like, you mentioned something about show notes. The only thing on your show notes is let Pens talk.
Yep, just let Pens talk. Get out of his way.
I mean, it's not like he's bulldozing everything.
Oh,
I
no,
have questions every once in a while.
No, it's
but when it comes to
entirely knowledge based. Let Pens talk.
Yeah.
Insert comment from Justin here.
Step back and take a bow.
Yeah, insert comment from Justin here and continue.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
But Pens, do you have any? Sorry. Go ahead, Green.
I was just gonna say, is there any anybody else that you know, Jay, and that is close to us that could do this though? Like, Pens is always the one when I do play Halo that I'm like, I kind of hope Pens shows up in chat because I've got questions.
What is going on?
I know it
No,
just makes it always easier.
I mean, part of it also
sure
is that I don't really play much other than Destiny and Halo, so my interest in lore at the moment is pretty those two.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've said it before. Halo is my Star Wars. I never got into Star Wars as a kid, so when it came to a sci-fi series that I just fell in love with, it's Halo. And just tying it in, a lot of it comes down to Chief and Cortana. From a lore standpoint, it's just amazing the way they were written, how they interacted, and how close they are. So
I may have described Halo to Julie just that exact way, that Halo is video game Star Wars for a lot of people.
It's not a wrong, that's not wrong. In a lot of ways, that's actually a really high I view that as a really high compliment for it. Especially with regards to the expanded universe that Halo has and that Star Wars has. I mean, it really is ridiculous when you start. I mean, it's the same thing as when I think wasn't it Julie when we printed out the story of Destiny? It's it's one of those things where it's there's a lot going on in here.
That was another thing that she asked. She asked if the lore is as dense as Destiny, and I said in a lot of ways it is, because they have the books and the comics and everything. But I think more written word at this point, I'd be hard pressed to say Destiny probably is up there with it.
Well, at one point in time, I figured out how many written words there were in the novels, and it was 2.75 million words written. Yeah. And
this
I think
was around
that was
the time
2 or 3
that
novels
Pens was
ago.
trying to figure out the timeline of said novels.
Right. But it's the amount of density in Halo lore is there for people who want to go find it, right? That it is super dense. There are factions within Halo, obviously, that have a lot of say in where the story goes, but the story does always seem to continually follow either Master Chief or the Spartans in general, or Halsey, depending on where you're heading in the story. But it feels like in Destiny we get a lot more perspectives outside of the ones that are the main focus. You get a lot more from Zavala. You get a lot more from Anna. We have a whole series of journals from Clovis Bray himself now. In Halo, I don't know if they deliver it in the same fashion.
No, it's a different type of storytelling. It definitely is. It's more of a traditional type of storytelling where you have the number of protagonists are main protagonists are kind of small, and it's kind of narrow. I mean, you do have other stories which feature other ones, but nothing like Destiny where the main focus of the story this quarter is going to be this character, but next quarter it's going to be this character. You know, that's definitely not what you find in Halo. Again, it's just two different kinds of storytelling.
Oh yeah,
and
not to say that one is better than the
Right.
other. That's absolutely not the case. I think one may be slightly easier to stick to.
Yeah, when you have dates,
I'd like to
yes.
think.
When you have set dates for stuff, yes. At least that's my perspective. That's just the way I
Timelines
think.
help.
Yes.
But I think also to kind of tie into that too, it's also the difference between the games themselves as well, right? Because like Halo is very much, Halo is very much it actually is the standard that FPSs are held up against quite often.
Right.
You know, and that's by design. But Destiny has that it has the benefit of coming after Halo. And so there's like this evolved form, if you will, of the way that the story is being told, in the sense that it's not a static, you know, like what Pins and you guys are kind of saying is like, it's not a static cast. It's actually more of that MMO-esque type storytelling. And so the delivery of the system, I think, had to evolve as well to reflect that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is nice.
But
Anyway.
that all being said, I'm pretty sure that's a good wrapping point for that one. So as always, thank you for your time. And until next time, remember, with wisdom we conquer, stand strong, stand tall, and keep exploring. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/FocusedFireChat. Links to all our episode archives can be found at www.thelorenetwork.com. Please be sure to email us at focusfirechat@gmail.com with any comments and or questions for the team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. So until next time, focus your fire and may your light shine bright.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.